The engine of my 1996 Ford F-250 ticked as it cooled, every metallic click loud in the stunned silence hanging over the canyon crest entrance. I sat behind the wheel, watching a single bead of sweat slide down a lukewarm soda can on my dash. The windshield was filmed with red dust I'd dragged in from 2 states back, dust that didn't belong anywhere near manicured stonework, manicured lawns, manicured people. Through that dusty glass, I saw her coming. She moved like the place belonged to her, like the road owed her respect. A sharp slice of artificial sky against the raw brown desert, wrapped in a tailored powder blue suit that probably cost more than the transmission under my boots. Her heels struck the asphalt with the steady rhythm of a judge's gavel, and her eyes didn't land on me once. Not on my face, on my truck, like it was a disease that had crawled into her sterile operating room. She stopped at my front bumper, pulled out a gold-trimmed Mont Blanc pen and rapped it hard on my hood. Tap, tap, like she was knocking on a coffin. "Move this scrap heap," she said, voice carrying with the polished certainty of someone who'd never been told no. "I'll have it crushed into soda cans." She didn't wait for an answer. She turned her back immediately and lifted a manicured hand toward a heavy-duty tow truck idling 50 yards behind her, amber lights spinning like lazy warning halos. To her, I wasn't a person. I was debris, a visual offense, a stain in a zip code that legislated against imperfections, a problem between her and the line of Teslas and Range Rovers stacked behind my tailgate like obedient livestock. She believed she was taking out the trash. She had no idea she just declared war on the legal owner of the ground beneath her Italian leather heels. I opened the door. The hinge groaned, a long, rusty complaint that made the woman in the blue suit flinch like the sound touched her nerves. I stepped down slow. Boots hit pavement with a heavy thud, caked in dried clay, mud-cracked and ugly against the flawless blacktop of the HOA's private drive. I didn't introduce myself. I didn't apologize. I walked to the bed of my truck, grabbed a tripod and what looked like binoculars, but wasn't. It was a military-grade laser rangefinder. I set the tripod on the center line like I was staking a claim, leveled it, and peered through the lens. "Excuse me." She spun around, face twisting into incredulous outrage. "You did not give me permission to set up camp. This is private property. I am Celeste Wren, president of the Canyon Crest Board, and you are trespassing." I didn't answer. I aimed the rangefinder at the corner of the marble gatehouse to my left. The device chirped. I wrote the number in a leather field notebook worn soft from years of work. Then I swung right to the decorative fountain, recycled water thrown into desert air like the community could afford to waste anything. Another beep, another note. "Are you deaf?" Celeste stepped closer, perfume and aggression invading my space. "You're blocking the only access road to 200 estates. I have Sheriff Pike on speed dial, and I will have you arrested." I finally looked at her. My face stayed flat, bored in the way you get after years of locating hidden money for federal creditor trusts and watching liars sweat through expensive suits. "You might want to hold that call, unless you want the sheriff to witness a federal closure." Celeste laughed, sharp and barking. "Closure? You're delusional. You look like a drifter who took the wrong turn at the landfill." She reached into her blazer pocket, pulled out a stack of neon orange violation stickers, and slapped one onto my driver window like she was branding cattle. "That's a $5,000 fine for a vehicle causing visual distress. You have 5 minutes to pay or I seize the vehicle." I stared at the sticker, bright, aggressive, designed to humiliate. I didn't peel it off. I leaned against my door right beside it and crossed my arms. If you're watching this madness, drop your country below, because what happens next is where she stopped playing HOA games and started stepping into a world she didn't understand. 5 minutes, she repeated, glancing at a diamond watch like time belonged to her. Celeste, I read her name off the embroidered badge on her lapel. You've got a structural problem. She frowned. What are you babbling about? The Obsidian Meridian Group, or maybe you know them by the name they used in court, Meridian Apex Holdings. Her eyes flickered, a micro-expression, gone fast, but I caught it. Everyone in high-stakes real estate knew Meridian Apex. They were the architects of a massive investment fraud in the late 90s, a house of paper that collapsed and ruined thousands of families, including mine. They didn't just steal cash, they buried assets, shell companies, misfiled deeds, infrastructure rights tucked under layers of corporate fog. I'd spent the last 5 years peeling those layers back, not for revenge, for restitution. The ruling came down 3 days ago, I continued calmly. The creditors got the remaining physical assets. Celeste scoffed, reassembling her confidence. Ancient history. This community was developed 10 years ago. We have clear title. You have title for the houses, I corrected, for the clubhouse, for the golf course, but your developers were sloppy. They bought the parcels, not the infrastructure rights. They assumed your access road was a public easement. I picked at the orange sticker with my thumbnail and tore off a tiny corner. They assumed wrong. Celeste's mouth tightened. We've maintained this road for a decade. And that, I said, is called trespassing, unauthorized improvement of private property. Her phone hand twitched. I flipped my notebook open and tapped it. Also, I've done a preliminary assessment. This road was graded for heavy haulers, but the subbase has degraded. In its current condition, it's unsafe for public transit. What do you think you're doing? She snapped. I walked to my truck bed, pulled out a heavy steel A-frame sign, unfolded it, and slammed it onto the center line. The clang cracked through the air like a gunshot. Private logging access closed for maintenance, unsafe for public use. Celeste's face went red. You cannot close this road. It's the only way in or out. We have doctors, lawyers, CEOs. Then they should have bought helicopters, I said, deadpan. Because as the property owner, I have liability exposure. If a Range Rover hits a pothole and flips, you sue me. I'm mitigating risk. The road is closed. Celeste turned, jaw trembling with rage, and jabbed her finger at the tow truck driver. Hook him, now! Drag this junk out of here! The driver hesitated, eyes jumping between my sign, my truck, and her suit. Do it, she screamed, or I terminate your HOA contract. The tow truck began backing toward my bumper. Celeste smiled at me like she'd just won. Checkmate, you dirty grifter. I didn't stop him. I reached to my belt and pulled a rugged long-range radio, pressed the talk button. Unit 1 to Unit 2, hostile containment at South Gate, initiate Phase 2. A crackle. Copy, Unit 1. Celeste blinked. What? From the desert landscaping on both sides, 2 men in high-vis vests and hard hats stepped out with survey poles. Not my guys, county boundary witnesses I'd hired that morning, but Celeste didn't know that. Then, behind me, from the highway, a deeper rumble rolled in, throaty, heavy. A massive flatbed transport truck turned off the road, air brakes hissing. On its bed sat 2 concrete jersey barriers. Celeste's face drained. What is that? Maintenance equipment, I said. Standard safety protocol. The tow driver slammed his brakes. He threw his hands up. I'm out, lady. I'm not getting pinned between a pickup and a semi in a construction dispute. He peeled away, leaving Celeste in the exhaust. Her fingers shook as she yanked out her phone. I'm calling Sheriff Pike. You are going to jail. Tell him to bring a surveyor, I said, and went back to my measurements. Because I wasn't stalling, I was building a case, and Celeste Wren was about to learn what happens when you threaten the wrong man on the wrong road. Sirens arrived 10 minutes later and tore the quiet open like a zipper. 2 county cruisers skidded onto the shoulder. Sheriff Harlan Pike stepped out of the lead car. Big man, big belt, bigger swagger.
the kind of lawman who solved problems by being the largest object in the room. He walked up with his hand resting casual on his sidearm like it was punctuation. "Sheriff!" Celeste rushed him like salvation. "Sheriff, he's a vagrant. He put up a fake sign. He's holding our community hostage. Arrest him." Pike looked past her at me, then at my truck, then at the sign, then at the line of luxury cars simmering behind the gate. "All right, son, fun's over. Move it or you're riding in the back of mine." I didn't flinch. "Sheriff," I said, keeping my hands visible, "I'm securing a hazardous roadway on my private property. If you force me to open it, you're accepting liability for any accidents on compromised infrastructure." Pike blinked once. "Private property? This is the main road." "Incorrect." I reached into my cab, pulled out a rolled tube document, and unrolled it across my hood. Weighted the corners down with a wrench and the rangefinder, like I'd done this 100 times. "Original 1981 plat map, certified yesterday by county records." Pike stepped forward, squinted down. I pointed to the thick blue line running under our feet. "Unit 9, private logging access retained by Meridian Apex, never dedicated to the county, never transferred to the HOA." I placed a second document beside it. "And this is the federal court order from 3 days ago transferring all Meridian Apex assets into the creditor trust, where I serve as trustee." Pike's swagger evaporated in real time when he saw the federal seal. "This looks official," he muttered. "It is. This road is mine. The ground under your gatehouse, mine. The ground under your fountain, mine. And right now, I've declared it unsafe for public use." Celeste shoved past him, eyes blazing. "Forgery! Look at him! Does he look like he owns $1 million road? He looks like a mechanic." I held her gaze, bored. "Appearances can be misleading," I said. "For example, you look like a successful property executive, but you are trespassing on a federal asset." Pike turned to her. "Miss Wren, if this is real, my hands are tied. This is civil." "You work for us," Celeste hissed, voice dropping venomous. "Our association donated 10 grand to your campaign." Pike stiffened, caught between money and a federal seal. Then he exhaled and stepped back. "I can't arrest a man for standing on his own land. You need a lawyer." "I have lawyers," Celeste snapped. "Then call them," Pike said, and for the first time his tone carried warning instead of swagger. Celeste pivoted, cold, calculating. "You think paper makes you powerful?" she said softly. "I control the water, the power, the access. You're one man with a rusty truck." She raised her phone again, voice turning sharp and brisk. "Bring the heavy equipment from Phase 4, excavators, now, to the gate." Then she smiled at me, reptile smile. "Let's see how your logging road holds up against a D10. Pike's eyes widened. "Celeste, don't!" "I'm clearing an emergency access route," she shouted, spinning a new story instantly. "He's endangering lives." It was clever, the safety angle, the excuse to destroy my truck and call it heroism.
I didn't move. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a satellite phone. Celeste sneered. "Calling your mommy?" "The Environmental Compliance Office," I said calmly. She froze for half a beat. "Who? You see that fountain?" I nodded at the water spraying behind her. "And that decorative pond? When your developers installed them, they tapped a federally protected aquifer buffer. Unit 9 sits on a wetland transition zone. That's why it was never developed." I dialed. "Any heavy machinery on this soil without federal clearance is a felony," I said. "Not a misdemeanor, a felony. Mandatory minimums, fines that start in the millions." I hit send and put it to my ear. "Hello, this is Mason Crowe. I need to report active environmental disturbance in progress at..." Celeste's confidence wavered. Then engines roared in the distance. A yellow bulldozer crested the boulevard like an executioner, black smoke rolling from its stack. Behind it, an excavator clanked forward. Residents scrambled back into their cars. The ground trembled. Pike snapped into his radio. "Call them off!" Celeste screamed over diesel thunder. "Push him out! Push him off their road if you have to!"
The bulldozer lowered its blade, scraping sparks. And if you're still here watching this standoff, comment the word bulldozer right now, because what happened next turned her emergency powers into a disaster she couldn't spin. I raised my fist, one silent signal. Behind me, the flatbed driver gunned his engine. The bed tilted. 2 10-ton concrete barriers slid off with a bone-shaking crash, dropping into place like a gray wall across the entire road. The bulldozer slammed its brakes, inches from impact. Celeste ran toward the barrier, shrieking, "What did you do?" I walked up, pulled out red spray paint, and wrote across the concrete in rough strokes, "Asset seized." I threatened to destroy your property, so I'm impounding the access point. Nothing comes in, nothing goes out. People started shouting behind the gate. Panic, rage. Celeste turned back to Pike. "Arrest him! He blocked emergency access!" Pike looked at the federal order on my hood, looked at the bulldozer tearing up the HOA boulevard, looked at the barrier wall. Then he said slowly, "Actually, Ms. Wren, he just stopped a bulldozer from committing vehicular homicide. Looks like he secured a crime scene." Celeste's mouth fell open. I stepped closer to her, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "You have 23 hours to remove your gatehouse from my land, or I start charging rent on that too." Her eyes flashed hatred. "I'll bury you in lawsuits." I smiled, small and calm. "And I'll bury you in audits," because I'd seen the records, and now I controlled the road. Night in the high desert comes fast. One minute the sky is bruised orange, the next it's black velvet full of sharp stars, cold and clean like the universe wants to witness consequences up close. I pulled on a canvas jacket and sat on my tailgate, listening to the shift on the other side of the barrier. The chaos had burned hot and loud at first, people shouting, horns blaring, phones pressed to their ears. Then it dulled into something heavier, sullen, exhausted. Cars turned around, people parked on the shoulder and walked the last quarter-mile home in dress shoes, carrying briefcases, grocery bags, and bottled water like refugees from a luxury catalog. They glared at me as they passed, but they didn't say anything. The concrete wall spoke for me. Across the barrier, I watched the HOA regroup. A man in a golf cart rolled down from the clubhouse, white polo, plaid shorts, radio in hand. He stopped beside Celeste, who sat on the curb with her face in her hands. They whispered. He pointed at my truck, then at the gatehouse, then at the dark security office windows. That's when I smiled, because Phase 2 wasn't just the road, it was the utilities. The high voltage lines? Sure, the electric company had easements, but the private fiber runs, the booster pumps feeding those fountains, the exclusive infrastructure the developer installed, that was laid in the same trench as the road, on my land, without contracts. At 7:11 p.m., Sheriff Pike walked back up to the barrier, his tone lower. "Mason," he called, leaning on the concrete, "the fire chief says this is an egress violation. The fire chief is welcome to inspect my assessment, but I won't open a compromised roadway to heavy apparatus. If a fire truck collapses this base, people die. I'm not owning that." Pike exhaled. "You're playing a dangerous game. These people have friends in the Capitol. Then they'll file for an injunction. An injunction requires a hearing. A hearing requires proof. They don't have it." He studied me a moment. "You hate her." "I don't hate her. I don't know her. She's just a squatter in a nice suit, but she represents something I do hate." "What's that?" "Taking what isn't yours because you think you're too important to ask permission." Pike glanced back at the community. "She's scared. Good, because when federal eyes land on this place, fear is the least expensive thing she's going to pay." He stiffened. "Federal eyes? I don't bluff. The environmental issue is real, but the money trail? That's bigger. I sent a package this morning." Pike whistled low and walked away without another word. I sat there under the stars, thinking about the first time Meridian Apex stole from my family, the day my father admitted the money was gone. He died thinking he'd failed. He hadn't failed, he'd been robbed. Celeste Wren was just the latest face of that same greed. She thought rules didn't apply to her. She thought she could pave over the world and call it hers.
By sunrise, the heat returned like a welding torch. No sleep for me, no sleep for them either. On the other side of the barrier, residents gathered in clusters with artisan coffee and fury, staring at assets seized like it was written in a foreign language. At 8 a.m. sharp, a convoy of black sedans rolled up. the legal cavalry. 4 men stepped out in suits that could have funded my truck 3 times over, briefcases in hand. Leading them was a man I recognized from years of digging through corporate rot. Grant Hawthorne, Meridian Apex's old fixer, the guy who buried truth under paper and smiled while doing it. Celeste waited beside him in a fresh white suit, as if changing colors could reset reality. She pointed at me, mouth moving fast, hands chopping the air. Hawthorne nodded once, walked to my window, and tapped. I lowered the glass 3 inches. "Mr. Crowe," he said, voice smooth as polished gravel, "you've made your point. This stunt ends now. Emergency injunction, state court, immediate removal." He tried sliding an envelope through the crack. I didn't take it. "That's impressive speed," I said, "but you filed against me personally, not the creditor trust. Wrong defendant, wrong jurisdiction." His smile twitched. "We'll amend. The sheriff will cut the locks." "You're also planning to claim prescriptive use?" I asked, almost amused. 10 years of use means you own it by default?" He blinked. "Prescription requires hostile use," I recited. "But you have a problem. Your own internal email chain from 2011 acknowledged the road was private. You asked permission to pave. You never got it." His smile vanished. "You hacked." "I bought the servers, Grant. Hard drives remember everything." Then I stepped out with a new prop. Bolt cutters. Not because I planned to cut anything, because people panic faster when they see consequences in your hands. I walked to a green utility junction box half hidden by decorative shrubs and kicked it lightly. Hollow ring. Celeste snapped. "Utility companies have easements." "The utility company does," I agreed, "for high voltage. But your private distribution grid, your heated driveway circuits, your pump feeds, installed by private contractors on my land without easements." I dropped the bolt cutters onto the pavement with a loud clang. "Negotiate, right now, in front of your residence." They'd pushed up close to the barrier, listening. At the front stood a man in scrubs, jaw tight, eyes red shot from a night of being trapped. Dr. Nolan Reyes. He raised his voice. "What do you want? How much to open the road?" "It's not about what you pay me," I shouted back. "It's about where the money you already paid went." I pulled a portable projector from my truck and aimed it at the side of Hawthorne's glossy black SUV. The image was clear enough despite the sun. A spreadsheet. "For 10 years, I said, voice carrying, "you've each paid $200 a month for road maintenance. That's 40 grand a month, nearly 5 million over a decade." I clicked. A column highlighted. Payee. "According to your bylaws, that money goes to escrow for infrastructure." I stomped my boot on a crack in the asphalt. "This road hasn't been properly rebuilt in years, so where is the money?" Celeste shrieked. "Stop him!" Dr. Reyes turned his head slowly toward her and said something so quiet it landed like a brick. "Shut up, Celeste." The crowd inhaled as one organism. I clicked again. A wire transfer record. Payee, Wren Strategic Management, LLC, Reno, Nevada. I clicked again. Incorporation papers. Registered agent, Celeste Wren. The sound that moved through the crowd wasn't theatrical. It was air leaving lungs. That's our money," a woman whispered. "You've been charging them to maintain a road you don't own," I said, driving the nail in, "pocketing it, hiding it, calling it consulting." Celeste shook violently. "Administrative costs. I manage this community night and day." $5 million in admin? Dr. Reyes asked, stepping closer to her. Solid, a man who didn't get intimidated by suits. "You told us dues were rising because asphalt costs went up. You lied." Celeste backed into Hawthorne's sedan. Then she shrieked, twisting toward the sheriff. "Protect me!" Sheriff Pike leaned against his cruiser like he'd been waiting for the punchline. Behind him, 2 black SUVs had arrived with government plates. 2 agents stepped out in windbreakers, big yellow letters across their backs. IRS. Celeste froze. The lead agent walked up without rushing, quiet certainty in every step. "Celeste Wren?" he asked. She whispered, "This is a mistake. I need my lawyer." "You can call him from processing," he replied. "Warrant for arrest, wire fraud, tax evasion, embezzlement." Handcuffs clicked, a soft metallic snick that cut through the desert wind like the loudest sound in the world. Celeste's knees buckled for a second before pride forced her upright. "I'm the president!" she wailed. "Not anymore," the agent said, guiding her into the SUV. As the vehicle rolled away, dust blooming behind it, the entrance fell into a heavy silence. Residents stared at the space where their queen had stood. Then they looked at me, lost, because even with Celeste gone, the barrier remained. Dr. Reyes cleared his throat. "So," he said carefully, "do you evict us?" I looked at faces behind the gate, families, people duped by a con artist, people who worked hard and got played by someone who weaponized rules like a club. "I'm not wanting your houses," I said. "I don't want your HOA. I hate HOAs." Nervous laughter rippled. "I'm offering a lease, Unit 9, road, gate, utility easements." "For how much?" someone asked, tired. I paused just long enough to make them sweat. Then I said, $1 a year. They blinked. Dr. Reyes frowned. "What's the catch?" "3 conditions," I said, holding up 3 fingers. 1, dissolve the current board. 2, elect a new board, transparent, term limits, no dictators. 3, no more aesthetic tyranny, no fines for paint shades, no measuring grass with rulers. I glanced at the orange sticker still on my window. "And you let me scrape this off, for free." Dr. Reyes looked at his neighbors, saw relief spreading like water. He extended his hand over the barrier. "Deal," he said. I shook it. Then into my radio. "Unit 2, clear the lane." The flatbed roared, chains hooked, the barriers dragged aside with a grinding scrape that sounded like freedom. Cars rolled through slowly, not like prisoners escaping, like neighbors coming home. The man in the Porsche gave me a thumbs up as he passed. Dr. Reyes stopped beside my truck. "You should come to the next barbecue. Bring the old Ford." I almost smiled. "I might," I said. "Just don't find me if I park on the grass." He laughed and drove in. When the last car vanished, I tossed the closed sign into my truck bed and wrote one final line in my notebook. "Asset secured." Celeste thought power came from a title. She learned the hard way it comes from the paperwork to prove it. I fired up the Ford, it rumbled alive in the desert morning, and I drove through the gate, not as a trespasser, but as the landlord coming home.